Most of the ocean is still shrouded in mystery, whether we're talking about dark corners or creatures that are hiding in the depths. But sometimes, it gives us a peek into scary things it hides in its cold, dark depths. Like when you hear on the news that there are some deep-sea creatures washed ashore after a powerful storm once again. Some just look weird, while others are real monsters that live at depths of more than 3,300 feet. The coldest and deepest parts of the ocean have created one specific phenomenon called gigantism. So, sea spiders, squids, worms, and many other animals, mostly invertebrates, or creatures without backbones, they're all way bigger and scarier than the versions we see in the more shallow areas. In the Pacific depths, you can see a sea sponge as large as a minivan. Or what about the colossal squid that lives in subantarctic waters and is nearly 14 times longer than the arrow squid, a type that mostly lives in New Zealand? Researchers found many of these underwater monsters in the abyssal zone of the ocean. Back in 2021, the researchers showed images of the giant phantom jelly. It was at a depth of 3,200 feet. Its tentacles were 33 feet long. Wow, I wouldn't like to face that one on the beach. It probably eats only small fish and plankton, but it can swim to depths of more than 21,900 feet. And down there, this giant jelly doesn't have enough food. How does it survive then? Scientists haven't figured it out yet. And there are even more questions related to the giant squid, the biggest one ever found. This monster is 43 feet long, with a weight of nearly a ton. Imagine if those tentacles would grab your car, or something like that. They would smash it like it was a toy. There's no light in the abyssal zone. Sun rays just can't penetrate that deep. So there's no algae or underwater plants there. Local animals mostly eat snow. Marine snow is not like the regular one you build a snowman with. It consists of any small flakes or remains that fall from the surface of the ocean. Maybe even some leftovers that animals up there couldn't eat. So it's not much. But apparently, it's enough for very large creatures that hide deep down there, like giant squids. Squids that generally live at such depths don't bother going after their prey. They just wait until the poor animal swims right up to their long tentacles and falls into a trap. It may not be the best method ever, because not many animals will even swim into these dark, cold parts. But it's the method that saves energy. A giant squid eats only 1 ounce of fish daily, which is approximately 45 calories. That's nearly 50 times fewer calories than an average person should eat per day. So when a squid gets 1 fish, it saves it for a couple of days. I hope giant squids won't get the idea to go to the surface and look for food when there's not enough of it in the abyssal zone. And I hope even more that giant Greenland sharks won't get that same idea. You can find them at depths of up to 7,200 feet. They're twice as slow as we usually walk. They swim at a speed of 1.12 feet per second. Their slowness is part of the energy-saving mechanism that creatures down there need to survive. But they can speed up in the form of short bursts when they need to catch prey. But they kinda change their diet from predator to scavenger, considering their environment. There will be more leftovers falling from the surface than animals to go after. Greenland sharks grow just 0.4 inches per year, and they're mostly 20 feet long, which means they live for a very long time, sometimes up to 400 years. They also have a slow metabolism, and that's one of the main factors for their long life, too. Greenland sharks like to spend their time in cold waters. They're adapted to that, since their tissues have specific chemical compounds that prevent the forming of ice crystals all over their body. That means they have some sort of natural antifreeze. So what makes them so big? Scientists are still not sure, but some theories try to explain it. There's this thing called Kleiber's rule that says bigger animals tend to be more efficient. Just take a small fish and compare it to a whale with a mass hundreds of times bigger. The whale has a greater metabolism. It conserves energy more efficiently and loses less of it to the surroundings through heat. Moving on, bigger animals can ingest bigger prey. They're more likely to go through tough issues in their environment or defend themselves from predators going after them. Also, the body gets bigger when temperatures are lower. The Greenland shark is a perfect example. So are giant sea spiders. Sea spiders are generally common, and you find some very small ones at 0.04 inches. But in deeper parts of the Antarctic, they become 3-foot-long giants. They grow so big because the cold water has more oxygen. That way, more of it diffuses into the animal's body, and that allows it to grow bigger. Yeah, both as a creature and a nightmare. And how about this giant tube worm? Researchers found it accidentally while they were exploring the mysteries of the Pacific Ocean floor. They stumbled upon unusual hydrothermal vents. Volcanic heat is a thing that gets them going. As water seeps down through faults or cracks in the rock, these vents change their direction. When the water gets out of the vent, it's rich in different minerals and chemicals. Most animals wouldn't survive being around this toxic soup of chemicals, but not these tube worms. They came as a true surprise, because not only are they not bothered by these toxic vents and the almost boiling temperature of the water, but they developed entire ecosystems there. They're unique because they don't need sunlight to survive. Instead, small bacteria are their main source of energy. That bacteria gets their energy directly from these toxic chemicals. So it's not photosynthesis, but a process called chemosynthesis. And these tube worms don't have mouths. These bacteria live inside them. Strange story, huh? Plus, these scary worms reach up to 8 feet. Giant isopods are no better either. They lurk at the depths of the ocean of 1,640 feet or more below, far away from the sunlight, looking like some monstrous wood lice. They spend most of their time on the seabed, hoping to find some food falling from higher levels of the ocean. Check out their small hooked claws at the ends of their legs. Isopods use them to remain more stable while moving around the ocean floor. Since there's no light, they have long antennae that help them feel their way around. These sensory antennas are about half the length of their body. Giant isopods have pretty big eyes compared to their body size, too. They can grow over 12 inches from head to tail. And these fellas are really patient. Remember how we said animals down there rarely get food? Sometimes they need to wait for years to get a proper meal. That's why their metabolism is amazingly slow.
5 years later.
They can go for 5 years without eating anything. Imagine that. I get hungry just talking about this. In 2006, a biologist did research to compare the differences between the shallows and the deep sea regions. He realized the deep sea mirrors the island rule. First, isolated parts of land develop biodiversity you won't find anywhere else. Second, small-bodied life there grows much bigger when it's isolated, compared to life on large land masses. Resources are limited, but also competition and predators. And we don't know much about these deep-sea creatures. It's too expensive and too complicated to carry out such research. So we'll just wait for more raging storms to show us at least part of the monstrous world cold ocean depths hide.
The Meg, aka Megalodon, roamed the oceans long after dinosaurs were wiped out by the Great Meteorite. It was one of the largest and most dangerous hunters that have ever lived on Earth, as well as the biggest shark. But then, about 3.6 million years ago, the last of its kind disappeared from our planet, leaving only huge teeth for modern archaeologists to keep finding. There are a few theories about why it could have happened, but scientists might have found the true reason. The Megalodon, which means big tooth, was the largest shark ever to exist. It reportedly lived around 20 to 3.6 million years ago and was truly enormous. Its bite was more powerful than that of a T-Rex, and likely any other powerful predator that has ever roamed this planet. It's probably not surprising since this marine creature had extremely strong jaws that could span from 9 to 10 feet wide. That's enough to swallow 2 grown-up people side by side. The jaws were also lined with 276 teeth, and they reached 7 inches in length. That's as long as a small hedgehog. Once these teeth got worn down, the shark got rid of them and grew new ones. Such large sedated teeth helped the Meg to eat meat easily. The shark itself could grow up to 59 feet long. That's twice the length of a London double-decker bus. The animal was also pretty heavy. While a fully grown T-Rex weighed about 8 tons, the weight of a large Megalodon could be more than 30 tons. With no competitors, the enormous shark was the real king of the oceans. It hunted other sharks, large fish, and even whales. Then why did such a magnificent creature disappear from the face of the earth? The previous theories mentioned the great white shark. The Megalodon is usually described as some gigantic version of this marine animal. And this is a common mistake made because most people think these creatures were related. But in reality, the Meg looked more like a modern bull shark. Its snout was snout, its lower jaw was rather flat, and long and massive pectoral fins supported the animal's weight. But what's more important, the ancestors of today's great whites existed at the same time as the Megalodon. Now, with great size comes great clumsiness. And although the Meg was huge and powerful, it was also not as nimble as smaller and quicker great white sharks. Great whites could have rivaled a Megalodon for food, and were often more successful hunters thanks to their agility. They couldn't fight the Meg openly, but were fast enough to steal its food. So according to this theory, the only food left for the Megalodon were whales and equally big marine animals. Grown-up Megs could easily catch such beasts, but their offspring were much smaller and more vulnerable than their parents. Could smaller sharks have used this to their advantage? Maybe while megasharks were still little, they became a meal for great whites, as well as bull and tiger sharks. Even at those times, a great white shark could reach the length of 20 feet, while a Megalodon kid was definitely smaller. But even if there had been no open confrontation between young Megalodons and smaller grown-up sharks, Meg kids wouldn't have been able to find food for themselves to grow to adulthood. The reason is the same. The population of other sharks was growing, and they were rivaling each other and the Meg for convenient food. The more great whites and other sharks appeared in the oceans, the less food remained for young monster sharks. Eventually, they probably starved. But it's just one of the theories that try to explain why the Meg went extinct, and here's another one. A new study has shown that the Meg was most likely a warm-blooded predator able to regulate its body temperature, and that might have been the reason why this species disappeared with time. Scientists analyzed isotopes of the tooth enamel of the Megalodon and concluded that the animal could easily maintain a body temperature that was around 13 degrees F warmer than the temperature of the surrounding water. Such a temperature difference is much greater than what other sharks living at the same time as the Meg had, and it's large enough for the ancient predator to be classified as warm-blooded. These days, most fish are cold-blooded. Their body temperature is the same as the surrounding water, but some sharks, like mackerel sharks, keep the temperature of all parts of their bodies a bit warmer than the surrounding water. But it doesn't make them completely warm-blooded because they simply store heat generated by their muscles. And in mammals, body temperature is regulated by a special region of the brain called the hypothalamus. Anyway, the Meg's warmer body allowed the animal to move faster, deal with cold water better, and spread out all over the world. But eventually, it might have led to a disaster. The Megalodon lived during the Pliocene epoch, pronunciation. It began approximately 5.3 million years ago and finished 2.5 million years ago. During that period, global cooling occurred. It also caused the changes in sea level, which the Megalodon probably didn't survive. The main problem for the predator was to maintain an energy level allowing its body temperature to remain elevated. But to do it, the animal had to eat a lot, and I mean it. But it was a challenging task in a time of changing marine ecosystems and while competing with newcomers, such as the great white shark. If this theory is true, then the amount of energy the Meg had to use to remain warm could have contributed to its extinction. This new information is very important to us. It shows that many marine predators in modern oceans might be experiencing the effects of ongoing climate change too. By the way, have you heard that there have been several cases when people were sure they had seen the Meg? Or at least some similar extremely large monsters. And these sightings happened relatively recently. For example, in July 1916, the New Jersey coast of the US was terrified by a series of shark attacks. They happened during an oppressive heat wave when hundreds of beachgoers tried to find shelter from the heat near the water. People described the culprit that had caused all that havoc as a giant shark, much bigger than any regular one. Since then, scientists have been debating which shark species was involved in those accidents. The most popular guesses have been the bull shark and the great white. A picture of a huge shark roaming the Pacific Ocean not far from Guadalupe Island appeared in 1999. The creature was nicknamed Deep Blue. It could be distinguished from others by a wavy pattern separating its gray back and white belly. But even though some people claimed it could be the infamous Megalodon, experts came to the conclusion it was a female white shark, the largest ever seen. The average length of a male white shark is 11 to 13 feet. Females are bigger, up to 15 or 16 feet, but Deep Blue reached more than 20 feet in length. No wonder people were confused. For the last time, Deep Blue was spotted in 2013 near the western coast of Mexico's Baja California. But look, there's another jumbo shark, and you can meet it in any part of the world. The largest specimens can reach 40 feet long and weigh about 5 or even 6 tons. Could it be, if not the Megalodon itself, but one of its relatives? Again, a wrong guess. That's the basking shark. This animal prefers subpolar seas, with temperatures not higher than 58 degrees F, even though some of these animals do migrate to warmer places. Like whale sharks, basking sharks are harmless and don't attack snorkelers or divers. These creatures have loads of small teeth, but they don't use them when feeding. Instead, they swim with their huge mouths open and swallow plankton. A grown-up basking shark can filter nearly 2,000 tons of water per hour.
Do you know how harsh the water around undersea volcanoes is? It is so acidic that some samples even showed it to be at a level between stomach acid and battery acid. This water also contains so many chemicals that are toxic to normal marine creatures and plants. And yet, some species have found a way to live near or inside hydrothermal vents, like the special type of shrimp. This mysterious creature from the dark depths of the ocean has adapted to grazing bacterial filaments using its small claws, which are similar to garden shears. Hydrothermal vents stemming from the volcano coat the rocky surface, which means that all those creatures living down there get something to eat. In fact, undersea volcanoes provide 3 very important life-sustaining elements in those areas: minerals, hot water, and bacteria. Whenever there's an open fissure in the ocean floor, water seeps into it. Bacteria living in the crust of our planet then move in and remain in the hot water. The temperature of the water there can go up to 750 degrees. When the fissure erupts and expels the heated water, these bacteria get expelled along with it. There's something else that comes along for the ride: many nutritious minerals that resided in the rock that has been dissolved by the superhot water. The warmth coming from the vent and the minerals sustain the bacteria and give them the perfect chance to multiply. In many cases, the first sign of life around an underwater volcano is a thick coating of bacteria. The bacteria develop stable colonies, which is why other deep-sea creatures that inhabit these dark areas use them as food, like these shrimp. They're trying to eat that fast-growing bacteria and at the same time do their best to avoid the hazards of all the volcanic eruptions. The waters surrounding undersea volcanoes are usually too acidic and hot for humans to dive to, even when there is no lava, ash, or steam spewing from the craters. But when a group of researchers took adequate equipment and finally managed to leave their camera in the hot acidic waters for an hour, they had no idea that they were going to find... Are those sharks? They were hiding in the deep, orange, murky waters around the Solomon Islands submerged Cavachi. Different shark species, including hammerheads, scalloped hammerheads, and reef sharks. The story gets even better when you realize Cavachi is an active volcano with pretty common eruptions. Apparently, submarine boiling lava and underwater explosions don't scare those sharks at all. It's their home, where they feel safe and comfortable. They must have done a great job evolving into this harsh environment over millions and millions of years. So now they can swim through steam and lava without any issue. One of the reasons could be the special pores that they have near their snouts. One of these theories even says if these pores allow sharks to sense changes in the magnetic field of our planet. And sharks need that information for homing and migration, but that also means that they can detect cyclones and hurricanes, thus able to skillfully avoid them and similar dangerous situations in time. Back then, scientists also discovered a sleeper shark about 12 miles from the volcano. It's a specific type of shark that usually lives in the northern Atlantic and Pacific, or in some cases even further south near Antarctica and Australia. Alright, now let's check out this unusual worm. Don't let its rainbow glow fool you. This mysterious creature is actually a scary predator, with jaws usually seen in horror movies. This creep lives 3,900 feet deep, down in the muddy seafloor near northern New Zealand. A team of researchers took a 3-week expedition throughout deep-sea areas in the volcano-rich Kermadec Ridge. This enormous area included 3,800 square miles of canyons, continental slopes, mountains, and hydrothermal vents, parts where undersea volcanoes release gases and hot water. And that's where they found this thing. There are 10,000 species of these worms in the oceans. Most of them have tails and segmented bodies, but they usually look pretty different from one another depending on the area where they live. There is also a tube worm, which we also call the Pompeii worm. This type lives in hydrothermal vents deep down on the ocean floor. The temperature down there sometimes goes over 140 degrees. Up next, we got a snaggletooth dragonfish. A team of researchers found these tiny critters in underwater volcanoes near the coast of Sydney. It's a black fish with translucent fangs that looks way scarier than most fish you'd see close to the surface because it lives in warm, acidic water near undersea volcanoes. Humans rarely get to see these deep-sea fish. Alright, how about a lobster? The Uroptychus squat lobster lives in depths of up to 4,600 feet, mostly somewhere around deep-sea coral. They're called squat lobsters because they look similar to true lobsters but are flattened in shape from the top and bottom. They don't go around carrying their shell with them, but their carapace is flexible and soft enough so they can squeeze their body into small crevices. When they do this, they leave their long, sharp claws exposed so they can keep unwanted visitors away. It's hard and dangerous to directly go into dark ocean depths and study underwater volcanoes, so researchers came up with a new way to do it. They study deep-sea coral. As they develop, the skeletons of black corals contain a record of the noble gases in seawater. This helps scientists collect information on volcanic activity near these corals. Check out these unusual yellowish creatures known as snake stars. Researchers saw them on an undersea peak at a depth of 4,000 feet. They spend most of their time wrapped around coral branches. That's where they can easily capture food particles from the perches around them. Volcanic vents themselves hide some very pretty unusual creatures, such as these small hairy red-eyed crabs too. They live among rocks on the summit of seamounts in dark depths of up to 3,000 feet. There are crabs that live even deeper than that, 1.5 miles, on the ocean floor near Antarctica. They got their nickname Hoth crabs because of their hairy chest and are part of a lost world of deep-sea creatures that live around volcanic vents at great depths. Big male Hoth crabs spend most of their time highest on the mineral spires of the vents. That's actually the closest to the hot fluids that go out of them, where smaller male crabs live at the base of the mineral spires. After they get together, females crawl away, looking for the warm fluids that seep from the sea floor. They are rich in minerals, but they can be toxic to their young, so they need to get far away. This way, female crabs move to a safe place and hide from the potential predators, like seven-armed sea stars and big sea anemones. Wow, the cavalcade just never ends, huh? Now these next creatures, the Galapagos snakes, don't live in undersea volcanoes, but it's still fascinating how they've managed to adjust to living on the summits of volcanoes. The Galapagos Islands have 21 volcanoes, and 13 of them are active. It's a unique area with many animal species that you won't find anywhere else on the planet. A wide variety of iguanas, tortoises, lizards, geckos, seals, birds, and sea lions, and snakes that decided to inhabit volcanoes. Also, Alaskan fur seals have been popping up in some unusual locations, like the top of a small island that forms the tip of an active undersea volcano, perhaps? Vents there spew steam, mud, and sulfurous gases. Their surface is covered with huge rocks that exploded out of the vent a couple years ago. This place doesn't look that hospitable, but northern fur seals obviously wouldn't agree. Maybe because there's so much food around this island, like squid and northern smooth tongue, a deep water fish. Because of the ease with which they can gather food, it's much easier for them to take care of their young. And check out this giant woolly rat. It lives in the rainforest that surround the extinct volcano called Mount Basavi. Its crater is 2.5 miles wide. There are high walls around the volcano, and at first glance it seems like nothing interesting has been going on here, except for some unusual creatures, like this large fluffy animal that kind of looks more like a beaver than a regular rat. It's 32 inches long from nose to tail and weighs 3.5 pounds, and is one of the largest rats in the world. They have a silver-gray coat, and researchers think that they build their nests underground. These rats eat roots and leaves. This extinct volcano is in New Guinea, which is known for its over 70 species of mice and rats. So these woolly rats have obviously adjusted through generations and evolved to live in these unpleasant conditions.
If you could dive right into the mysterious darkness of the ocean depths, who knows what you'd come upon? Legends that are hundreds of years old mention some giant sea monsters hiding deep down below the ocean waves, like the Kraken, the Loch Ness Monster, the Hydra, Leviathan, and so many more. Okay, no one has ever seen such monsters, but there are still weird and unusually big sea spiders, squid, worms, and many other animals that grew way more than we'd expected. Take a look at the colossal squid from sub-Antarctic waters. It's around 14 times longer than the arrow squid that lives near New Zealand. And deep down in the Pacific Ocean, there's a sea sponge as big as a minivan. Oceans contain about 96.5% of all water on our planet. Up to 80% of all life on Earth we've discovered is under the oceanic waves. We haven't explored, mapped, or even seen more than 80% of the ocean. In fact, we've mapped Mars better than we have the ocean bottom. The pressure down there is insane, and it would make you feel like you're holding up almost 50 jumbo jets. And temperatures at such depths are extremely low. Conditions deep below the oceanic surface are harsh, so creatures that live there need to adjust. That's why many of them grew very, very big to survive. Creatures that live in cold, dark depths are so big because of a phenomenon called deep sea gigantism. The deeper you go below the oceanic surface, the less sunlight there is. That's why the temperatures drastically fall. The result of this is increased cell size and longer life of creatures. Also, these creatures don't have as much oxygen as the marine animals that live in shallower parts, and their food sources are minimal. Much of the food they get comes from shallower waters, and only a little bit trickles down to the deeper parts. And when there's not enough food, being large is an advantage. Larger creatures can move farther and faster to find something to eat. Their metabolism works slower. They don't digest the food that fast, so they can store food and conserve energy for hard times when they can't find anything to eat. They don't need to regulate their body temperature either, which also helps them save some energy, which they can then transfer to other body processes. They mature more slowly and later than those living in shallow waters. The majority of fish species that dwell in deep waters live 30 years or even more. Orange ruffy fish, on the other hand, live up to 150 years. This fella grows 24 feet in length and weighs up to 1.5 tons. But it grows to be so big for centuries. They start looking for partners when they're 150 years old, and they can also live this long because there are not so many predators at such depths. Also, there are no humans or other things that can disturb them or endanger their existence. At such depths, the environment is pretty stable, so many animals there are like living fossils, because they probably haven't changed in millions of years. The first 650 feet of the ocean's depth are considered to be the open ocean. The majority of the marine life we've discovered lives there, since that's the area the sun can still reach. And then, as you continue going deeper, you reach the twilight zone. It seems like nothing lives there. But at about 820 feet, you see a small oasis of ancient life blooming. For example, there are sea lilies, animals that have been living at such depths unchanged for millions of years. Coelacanths, another living fossil, have been living in the ocean for more than 360 million years. Hagfish haven't changed in a very long time either, for over 300 million years. This creature lives at depths of 5,500 feet. They evolved before the rest of the vertebrates, which is why this is the only living animal without jaws or a spine, even though it still has a skull. Deep-sea creatures can't survive in shallow waters. They've evolved to live in depths under bigger hydrostatic pressure. Humans and other organisms that have internal spaces filled with gas would end up crushed if we could go to such depths. That's why deep-sea divers always need to wear special dive suits designed for surroundings with higher pressure, even though they're not going that deep to the areas where these giants live. But near Antarctica, you can see gigantism way closer to the surface, like giant sponges, sea slugs, sea spiders the size of a dinner plate, worms, and even some enormous single-celled organisms. They all tend to chill in shallower waters. Scientists are not sure why exactly, but they think it could have something to do with oxygen. Giant species use just a little oxygen, and the waters around Antarctica are pretty rich in it, which means there's hardly any limit to these animals growing bigger and bigger. Back to deep-sea creatures. As mentioned, they had to adjust to strong pressure, so they almost don't have any air gaps in their body at all. They're mostly water-based, and since water is incompressible, which means it's not something you can compress, it helps them stay unaffected at such high pressure. But because of all that, if they were to go up towards the surface, they'd probably swell up, maybe even explode. Just look at the blobfish, the one that takes the title of the ugliest animal in the world. It looks normal deep down below the surface, where its natural habitat is. But when it gets up to the surface, where the pressure is 120 times lower, it changes its shape. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or muscles, so without high deep-sea pressure, it ends up being all floppy and saggy. The dark oceanic depths are not just scary to watch, but to listen to as well. In 1997, scientists were trying to find underwater volcanoes located off the South American coast. During their travels, they recorded one of the loudest noises ever registered. It was pretty weird, too. It was so loud, even sensors from more than 3,000 miles away managed to pick it up. They later called it the bloop. It took them 15 years to conclude the sound came from an ice quake. That's when seismic activity breaks frozen ground. Water at the bottom of the ocean is not always extremely cold. There are hydrothermal vents on the seafloor, and the water that comes out of them can be up to 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Powerful pressure, yep, the same one that would crush you, is something that doesn't allow the water to boil. There are hundreds of animal species that live near deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Some of them, such as tube worms, are not like anything we have seen before. These worms absorb chemicals from vent fluids. That's how they feed bacteria that live in them. And in return, those bacteria give them the carbon the tube worms need to survive. 2/3 of all of the coral species scientists discovered live in dark, deep, and extremely cold parts of the ocean. Some even live in parts that are 3 miles deep. They can survive at low temperatures, such as 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Some of these cold water corals are more than 8,000 years old. They form amazing structures that can rise up to 115 feet tall. The deep is not just a mysterious world of unusual creatures. The landscape under the oceanic surface is magnificent too. The canyons hiding there make even the Grand Canyon seem small. For instance, check out the one located in the Bering Sea, the Chug Canyon. Its vertical relief is more than 8,500 feet deep. That's huge. The largest ocean waves are not the ones you can see from the shoreline. They occur under the surface, and they're called internal waves. They take place between two water masses that have different densities. They travel at speeds of thousands of miles per hour and can be 650 feet tall. The deeper you go, the creepier they get. You're about to travel to the darkest ocean depths and check whether this claim is true. Are the creatures living there as scary as people think? You go 120 feet down underwater. Pay close attention to the bottom under your flippers. Oh my, what's that terrifying face half hidden in the sand? That's the northern stargazer. You can meet this fish in the eastern United States. It buries itself in the sand until unsuspecting prey gets near. Then, the nightmarish creature electrically shocks the poor animal and dines on it. You are moving deeper to 240 feet under the surface. That's where you spot a colorful, puffy creature, no more than 1 foot long. It's the sarcastic fringehead. At first, the fish seems to be harmless. Only unless it's provoked. When this animal is agitated, it opens its huge mouth to fend off predators. This defense tactic is a sight to behold, both surprising and frightening. Luckily, the fish is no threat to people whatsoever. The creature you see next can comfortably live in shallow waters, but you meet it at a depth of 900 feet. You don't even need to wonder why the animal's called the Game of Thrones brittle star. Unlike starfish that slowly crawl across the seabed, this creature moves fast. It wriggles its long, flexible arms to get from point A to point B. Its body is protected by a hard calcium carbonate shell. Also called snake stars, these creatures are tiny and easily fit in nooks, cracks, and small crevices in rocks. At a much greater depth of 2,000 feet, you come across the giant squid. For a long time, it was thought to be a creature from legends rather than a real animal. The giant squid was first caught on camera in 2001, and it's exactly as big as its name implies. The creature's eyeballs are the size of soccer balls, and the squid itself can weigh up to 600 pounds. Almost 3,000 feet below the surface, you get spooked by another creepy-looking animal. It's somewhat red and rather small, no longer than 1 foot long. As you approach the creature, it looks rather docile, or maybe just indifferent. The vampire squid, that's the animal's name, looks like an umbrella with tentacles. It doesn't even produce ink, so you leave it alone. Soon after that, at a depth of 3,200 feet, you meet the cookie cutter shark. This creature is a parasite. It attaches itself to big fishes, dolphins, whales, and sometimes even people. Then, using its neatly arranged serrated teeth, it gouges out cookie-sized pieces of meat. This nasty glowing animal doesn't grow larger than 20 inches and lives in the ocean twilight zone. At a depth of 3,300 feet, the light becomes a rare and valuable thing. The animals living that far away from the surface have to evolve unusual features to survive. That's how the barrel-eye fish ended up with a transparent head and 2 super-sensitive barrel-shaped eyes. Right now, pretty much like always, they're pointed upward, allowing the fish to see potential prey and you. Almost 4,000 feet below the surface, you see something droopy and saggy. The blobfish doesn't have a skeleton or any muscle. Its jelly-like flesh lets the creature survive incredible water pressure. Despite its appearance, the blobfish is an ambush predator. It usually lies very still on the bottom, waiting for unsuspecting prey to swim by. You go a bit deeper and spot a creature that looks particularly ghastly. The goblin shark senses prey with its snout. The creature's terrifying jaws are attached to elastic ligaments. When some animal comes too close, the shark catapults its mouth forward to catch it. If your mouth could do the same, you would be able to eat things dangling 7 inches away from your face. Even deeper than that, at 5,000 feet, you notice another member of the shark family. The frilled shark looks like an overgrown eel, but its gills are lined with red fringe at the edges, hence the name. The creature's horrifying mouth has 25 rows of razor-sharp backward-facing teeth, 300 in total. The shark prefers to hover in the water, waiting for its prey to come closer. Then, it charges at it like a snake. Suddenly, you see something glow brightly like an electric bulb. But after coming closer, you recoil in horror. The creature looks like an upgraded eel equipped with oversized teeth. That's the deep-sea dragonfish that can live at a depth of 6,000 feet. Chemical processes going on inside the fish's body produce an eerie red glow. This glow is used to communicate with other fish. At the same depth, you meet another deep-sea inhabitant. Its most prominent feature is its huge mouth. Thanks to it, the gulper eel can swallow its prey whole. Its stomach can expand to a terrifying size when it needs to fit something large. At a depth of 6,600 feet, you come across an angry-looking creature with a fishing rod over its head. It's the deep-sea anglerfish. The animal has an unusual dorsal spine, even though it's worn only by females. It protrudes above their mouth and has a lure on its tip, some luminous flesh that baits prey. The anglerfish has such a big mouth and its body is so pliable that it can swallow animals twice its own size. You're 7,000 feet down when you see another fish that's glowing in the dark. The black dragonfish is a sly creature. It has its light-producing organs arranged along its belly. The spooky creature also has gleaming flashlights next to its eyes. They help the animal find prey and attract potential mates. At the same depth, you also spot an enormous pillbug. But unlike the critter you can find in your garden, this one is at least 20 inches long. That's the giant isopod, and it is, indeed, related to the roly-poly, as well as crabs and shrimps. These creatures may look somewhat scary, but they're harmless. They feast on other deep-sea animals only after those have passed away. At a depth of 13,000 feet, you notice the ocean floor has become a bit fluffy. That's because it's covered with zombie worms. These creatures rarely grow to be more than 2 inches long, and still, they can break down fairly large animals, so strong the acid they produce is. The worms' feathery appearance makes them look like plants, but the truth is, these creatures munch on rock-hard bones of the world's largest animals, such as whales. The grid-eye fish almost scares you out of your mind soon after that. This creature has a pair of large greenish oval plates on the top of its head and no eyes whatsoever. Experts believe that these bony membranes detect light coming from predators, saving the fish's life. You're now 3 miles down below the surface, and that's where you spot something bizarre on the bottom. It's definitely a fish, but it's standing on the ocean floor on 3 long, rigid legs. Ah, it's the tripod fish. Curious rather than scary. This creature has adapted to the almost complete darkness by giving up on its vision. It has to rely on vibration and touch to sense prey. And then, the fish uses its fins as hands to transport food directly into its mouth. You don't have time to go any deeper before you spot the faceless fish. This slightly off-putting creature has no eyes, and its mouth, smiling a Mona Lisa smile, is underneath its body. For the first time, the faceless cusk, which is the creature's official name, was seen more than a century ago. The next time it happened was only in 2017. Once you've reached a depth of 6 miles below the surface, you see deep-sea cucumbers. These bizarre creatures are much bigger than their shallow water relatives. They spend most of their time on the sea floor. But if they need to escape predators, they are able to swim away. Deep-sea cucumbers have bright purplish coloring, tiny feet, and tentacles that surround their mouths. Cute. The question is, why do these deep-sea creatures look so scary? Life is very different there, at the bottom. Tremendous water pressure, a lack of food, and constant darkness. You have to adapt to survive in such extreme conditions. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Some of them look totally like Nemo or Dory. Then there's the butterfly fish, and fancy guppy, which is indeed really fancy. And then there's... What on earth is that? I would definitely not pay for a diving experience to see this guy. The anglerfish has the unofficial title of the ugliest animal in the world, but I wouldn't dare to break that news to it. There are more than 200 species of anglerfish currently swimming somewhere in the gloomy depths of the Atlantic and Antarctic Oceans, up to a mile below the surface. Some of them prefer different living conditions, the shallow tropical environments. Different kinds of anglerfish vary in shape and size, from the famous black sea devil to frogfish, monkfish, footballfish, goosefish, batfish, and sea toad. The larger ones can be half as long as a full-sized bed, but most are less than a foot long. Since the choice of meals where these guys live isn't that huge, they had to come up with a unique hunting strategy. They don't waste their priceless life energy on following prospective prey. Instead, they use a piece of dorsal spine that sticks above their mouths like a fishing pole, hence the name of the fish. There's a sac of bioluminescent bacteria that glows brightly in the dark at the end of that rod. The light lures prey, and all the anglerfish has to do is wait, and then enjoy its lunch delivered right to its mouth. Their bodies are pliable and huge, so they can easily swallow prey twice their size. Deep-sea anglerfish eat whatever they can find. Species that live in more shallow water aren't picky either, and can eat anything from shrimp to snails and small fish. Only female anglerfish have the cool fishing rod feature though. So what about their males? Finding a soulmate deep under the sea isn't that easy. I mean, literally, there's no light down there. Plus, there are frigid temperatures and low oxygen levels. Anglerfish can't afford to go on many dates in those conditions, so they mate for life. And before you go aw about it, I have to tell you, they do it in quite a special way. Male anglerfish are much smaller than their ladies. The contrast is so striking that when researchers first got interested in their love life, they thought those males were actually the offspring, or larvae, hanging out next to their moms. Certain anglerfish male species have receptors that alert them that there's a female nearby. After they mate, the male bites into his woman and stays attached to her head, belly, near her tail, and other areas he can access. While they morph together forever, the female fish gets the male's cells, DNA, and reproductive organs, but loses her immune response cells. The male gets free permanent housing and nutrition. Given the current real estate prices, it sounds like a dream. But that accommodation is shared by up to 8 males, and they can't move out if they ever feel like it. You're unlikely to meet this deep-sea fish in real life, but if you meet an anglerfish in your favorite video game, remember that you can easily outswim it and make it kinder to you with tranquilizing arrows. Once you befriend it, the anglerfish can be your scout and help you discover new areas with its bioluminescent pods. Back in the real world, down in the twilight zone of the ocean, about 650 to 3,300 feet down, the anglerfish isn't the only creature you're lucky you'll probably never meet. Many of the locals look like they come straight out of science fiction or horror movies, but that's because they had to adapt to this dark, deep world. I did my best to get you prepared for the creatures you're going to meet, starting with the common fangtooth. They spend most of their lives deep down, but at night, they move toward the surface to snack. These guys are more active than most other deep-sea dwellers. They don't wait for food to come their way, but actually follow it, and then get it with their long, hungry teeth. They don't have a built-in light bulb like the anglerfish, so they've developed a great sense of smell and use as much sunlight as they can get there in the depth to get around. Sometimes, even the shadow of a passing by prospective prey is enough for them to switch to action mode. And though they don't look too charming, they're completely harmless to humans if you ever run into one of these guys. Stoplight Loosejaw sounds like a great name for an alternative band, but it's actually another deep-sea resident with sneaky hunting habits. It has special light-producing photophores under each eye. They emit green and red light like a stoplight, hence the name of the fish. Unlike other fish, these guys hardly ever leave the twilight and midnight zones. Their lower jaw is a quarter of the total body length, and the stoplight keeps it open all the time, hoping to get some lunch. It looks like a ferocious predator, but mostly prefers zooplankton with an occasional dessert of shrimp, krill, and fish. I'm sure you didn't expect to meet a hybrid of an eel and a bird, but here it is! The slender snipe eel has a beak, much like that of a bird, with curving tips. The beak is equipped with tiny hooked teeth that the eels use to catch the antennae of delicious shrimp. And it sure is slender, stretching up to 5 feet and weighing only a few ounces. Scientists don't know all of this guy's secrets, since it's pretty tricky to study in their natural habitat. But it looks like they only produce offspring once in a lifetime, and then pass away. Glass squids like to take it easy in life and literally go with the flow. They're filled with a solution which is lighter than water, so they don't have to make any effort to move around the deep sea looking for food and partners. These creatures are transparent, so they blend into any landscape and don't even cast a shadow while moving. Talk about a great survival tactic. If danger finds it anyway, it can transform into a lumpy ball, pushing its head and tentacles into its mantle cavity. It can also release ink into the mantle and go from transparent to black. The same ink can protect it against hungry whales and seabirds. Another tactic they use to scare off predators is to activate their light-emitting organs around their eyes. I'm getting hungry. Maybe I can snack on this sea cucumber. Ouch, it's moving! So I guess it doesn't belong in a salad after all. These soft-bodied fellows live in all parts of the ocean, from shallow waters to the deep underwater world. Most of them slowly move around with their tiny feet, but some crawl around by flexing their bodies. Sea cucumbers can shed their internal organs when there's a predator approaching. Those sticky organs distract the intruder, and the happy cucumber moves on and just grows the organs back. What's that glistening in the distance? Looks like someone dropped gems in the water. That's a sea sapphire, also known as the most beautiful animal you've never seen. Some males of this type of copepod can change color from deep blue to purple, red, or gold. 1 second later, it's gone. And it's back, shimmering bright. The secret to this magic is that their bodies are transparent and reflect light differently at certain angles. It looks like it's their way of communicating between each other and attracting mates. Female sea sapphires don't have the same superpower, but their eyes are bigger compared to males, probably to spot them from a distance. Males roam wild and free, and their ladies stay in the crystal palaces of strange barrel-shaped jellies called salps.
The Bermuda Triangle is one of the most heavily traveled shipping routes in the world. Some skeptics believe that this fact solves the Bermuda Triangle mystery. Statistically, the busier the area, the higher the frequency of accidents and disappearances. While this makes sense, it's not the frequency of disappearances that's responsible for the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. It's the lack of explanation or wreckage found. On his very first voyage to the New World in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed through the Bermuda Triangle. Columbus reported that one night, when he was on the deck of the ship, he noticed a giant light appear in the distance, unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Columbus looked at his compass for direction, and it gave off erratic readings. You might have noticed that the Bermuda Triangle doesn't appear on any world map. This is because official institutions refuse to acknowledge that the area actually exists. No one exactly knows how many ships and planes have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. The rough estimate is 50 ships and 20 planes. Most of the time, the disappearances had no explanation and no wreckage has ever been left behind. When the TBF Avenger planes went missing, a massive search operation was conducted. Boats and planes searched the Bermuda Triangle for any signs of the aircraft. One of the boats searching was a PBM-5 Mariner airboat. The airboat took flight at 7:27 p.m. and called in a routine radio message 3 minutes later. Then, it was never heard from again. No trace was ever found of the rescue airboat. or the 5 Avenger aircraft. A huge investigation was launched into the disappearance of all these vehicles, but nothing was ever discovered. The Bermuda Triangle is home to some pretty intense and unexpected weather. Storms build up quickly and unexpectedly, then disappear soon after. If you blink, you might miss it. This could explain why few distress signals are issued. Pilots and sailors never saw the weather coming. A popular theory suggests that rogue waves are responsible for the many disappearances. Rogue waves are called extreme storm waves by scientists. They occur when different weather patterns take place at the same time and cause large unexpected waves that reach up to 100 feet tall. Witnesses say that the waves look like giant walls of water. These waves could explain why ships go down fast and without leaving any trace. Just off the coast of Japan, you'll find the Bermuda Triangle of the Pacific Ocean. They call it the Devil's Triangle. Between 1950 and 1954, 9 ships disappeared in this area without leaving a trace. The ship Kaio Maroon 5 was sent to investigate these unexplained disappearances when it also vanished. After this incident, the Japanese authorities labeled the area as a danger zone, and sailors were encouraged to avoid it. Some people blame all disasters on the extraterrestrial paranormal activity. Others suppose it's all about raging natural phenomena. Some scientists believe the cause of anomalies is the environmental changes. Also, there's a really high concentration of methane hydrates on the bottom of the ocean in the Pacific Bermuda area. This gas tends to set off, and when it happens, bubbles start forming on the surface of the water. These gas eruptions can interrupt the ability to float and can easily sink a ship. Because of this chemical reaction, there won't be even a trace left. Underwater volcanoes are said to be another possible explanation for the Japanese Dragon's Triangle. In fact, they can take down even small islands. Luckily, nobody lives there. It's a pretty common thing in this area that some of them disappear underwater and others appear out of the blue because of seismic activity. You'll never find the Dragon's Triangle on any official map of the world, so nobody's quite sure about how large it is in reality. In July 2015, 2 teenagers disappeared after setting sail off the coast of Florida. There's some mystery about what the 2 teens were really getting up to. They told their parents that they were just going to fish, but they told their friends that they were crossing to the Bahamas. Shortly after they left, a line of thunderstorms moved towards the area, and the boys were never heard from again. A massive search was conducted, but sadly, nothing was found. 1 year later, the pair's boat was found off the coast of Bermuda with a broken iPhone and some personal effects left inside. One of the most popular and bizarre theories trying to solve the Bermuda Triangle mystery comes from Charles Berlitz. He insists that the area is home to the lost city of Atlantis. The missing ships and planes and malfunctioning equipment, according to him, were all caused by rays of energy let out by the special energy crystals that power Atlantis. While this sounds silly, Berlitz's theory was convincing enough that over 20 million people bought his book worldwide. Previously, the compass wouldn't work well in the Bermuda Triangle since the lines of the 2 poles coincided here, true north and magnetic north. But if you fall into this line, your compass will behave strangely. But the magnetic north is constantly shifting, and now it's far beyond the triangle. No legend says pirates of the last centuries operate in the Bermuda Triangle, or that the Flying Dutchman makes other ships disappear. A popular theory is that ships travel to the distant past or future through a time portal in the Bermuda Triangle. Fortunately, these are all myths. Just imagine hundreds of giant tentacles reaching out to a group of ships sailing through the Bermuda Triangle. In the past centuries, they could easily sink an entire fleet, since the ships were made of wood and were lighter. Squids wrapped decks with their strong tentacles, made holes in the ship's hulls with their sharp beaks. Toothy suction cups could break the masts and tear the sails. The water was filling the holds and slowly rising to the deck. The ship sank in a matter of minutes. Survivors reached the shore and told everyone about huge monsters. This is how the legends of the Kraken appeared. Fortunately, now people have sonars and equipment for monitoring the sea space. They say the main reason why this place is so enigmatic must be the magnetic fields that form this ominous triangle. ocean floor is made of rocks containing a lot of magnetite. It's more like iron. Magnetic fields react to the high concentration of magnetite on the ocean floor, which may start a sort of conflict between the two. It can often lead to various weather anomalies and, as a result, navigation issues. And naturally, any changes in the ocean floor or the Earth's magnetic fields influence the Bermuda Triangle a lot. Magnetic fields tend to shift their position, so do tectonic plates and even the continents, even though we never notice it. The skies are usually very clear there, but back in 1883, some people witnessed abnormal things in the area. Some claim to have seen large blocks of ice falling from the skies, and the crew even managed to save one as hard proof. Seems like the Bermuda Triangle has an alternate not only on Earth, but even in space. Spacecraft usually don't disappear into thin air though, like there's no air. This anomalous area is really large and stretches right above the South Atlantic. It occupies the area from Chile to Zimbabwe and sits right at the point where Van Allen radiation belts are the closest to the surface of our planet. The Earth has two such belts, which come in handy trapping the particles that shoot in from the Sun. They do a great job protecting the Earth from radiation. The magnetic field there is lower, so it allows the Earth's radiation belt to come closer to the surface. Whenever a satellite passes by, it will be exposed to radiation, which might lead to serious damage. So, no satellite can take pictures of it. The South Atlantic anomaly is part of the Earth where natural radiation just flows out of control. Still, there is little evidence that all these triangles are really dangerous. Many believe the Bermuda Triangle itself has been proven time and again to be nothing but a work of fiction. In fact, some shipwrecks, such as the Ellen Austin, gained popularity in the middle of the 20th century, while nobody even thought of drawing a triangle in the Bermuda area before that. The mystery was popularized by science fiction writers and became a common myth, while no serious research proved it any more dangerous than other parts of the world's ocean. So, the crew of the Ellen Austin back in 1881 weren't even aware of the Bermuda Triangle back then, let alone afraid of it. What do you think?
Many terrifying animals live deep beyond the waves, like this vampire squid living 3,000 feet below the surface in almost complete darkness. This animal has a cloak, like a vampire's. That's why it's called the vampire squid. Deep down at the bottom, it can't use ink to defend itself. So this animal has developed an unusual tactic. It glows slightly to scare away predators. If this tactic fails, the vampire squid can turn its body inside out, revealing tiny spikes. When you translate its scientific name, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, it literally means vampire squid from the nether. Despite its terrifying looks, it's a harmless ocean animal. This previous creature was not from space, but this object definitely is. Before Elon Musk found a way to reuse rockets, NASA would simply drop old ones after launching astronauts into space, most of the time in the ocean or deserts. In 2012, Jeff Bezos launched a mission to find the Apollo 11 rocket. They found it by using sonar, but it was in terrible condition. It was sitting on the bottom of the ocean, not far from the predicted site. They were able to rescue the engine and reconstruct two of them. The most famous lost city is Atlantis, but sadly, we still haven't discovered it. However, Heraklion was also just a myth until one British pilot saw something that looked like a city while flying over the Mediterranean Sea. He reported it, and 60 years later, a group of divers went there. They were shocked when they found an entire city underwater. It was loaded with artifacts that could tell us a lot about the history of the place. Now, it's one of the best underwater archaeological sites in the world. It's believed that the rising sea caused the whole city to go underwater. The Titanic sank in 1912. The wreck was claimed to be officially discovered 74 years later. In reality, though, a fisherman found the Titanic 8 years earlier while fishing in the Atlantic Ocean. He was pulling out his net when he spotted a head stuck in it. Luckily, it was just a doll's head. Years later, after the fisher had passed away, his son sold the doll to a doll collector. She did a lot of digging and research on every person who had a porcelain toy on the Titanic. She found the owner of the doll. Ava Hart was on the Titanic and had a doll with her. Ava survived the catastrophe by a miracle, but her toy didn't. Hart even wrote about the doll in her journal, and every detail matched the toy found by the fisherman. The tripod fish lives deep in the abyssal zone, around 20,000 feet below the surface. It's adapted to such immense depths and uses its tripod fins to stay still on the bottom. This creature doesn't have big eyes, but even if it did, these eyes would be useless in the darkness. Instead, the tripod fish uses its fins like antennas to detect any movement in the water. This creature doesn't have much luck when it comes to its love life, so it had to develop unique tactics to reproduce. One fish can be both male and female. The next bizarre creature is the lizardfish. It has tons of razor-sharp teeth, a huge mouth, and really big eyes, which it uses for hunting. All this makes the animal look freaky. The lizardfish lives at depths of around 11,000 feet in the midnight zone, where there is zero light. This freak of nature basically eats everything it can fit inside its mouth, from small fish to other lizardfish. On the other hand, when they see other reptile fish, they probably fall in love instead, because finding mates at those depths is not an easy task. Like the tripod fish, the lizardfish can be both male and female at the same time. When you think of a river, you usually picture it on land. Still, nature is quite unpredictable, and it created a river flowing under the ocean in California. It's running at a depth of around 2 miles. This river has everything that an ordinary river has: sunken logs, trees, and rocks. And despite its uniqueness, it's not the only one in the world. There are also others in the Amazon and Greenland. A terrifying creature was discovered near Angola's coast by a remote operating vehicle. It looks like it doesn't have a head or a body. It was sitting at a depth of around 4,350 feet below the surface. After doing research, scientists concluded it wasn't anything from a sci-fi movie, it was just a cluster of siphonophores stuck together. In 2015, some random guy was diving in Caesarea, and something shiny caught his eye. He reached out, grabbed it, and realized it was a gold coin. After that, he examined the bottom and found out that there were many more. He reported the incident to the local authorities, and they concluded that he had found Arabic treasure. The coins were made of solid 24-karat gold and were a few thousand years old, but due to the perfect salinity and temperature, they looked brand new. The coins belonged to a ship carrying cargo. It was caught up in a storm and unfortunately sank. One of the weirdest things ever discovered was found in the Baltic Sea. It's an anomaly that looks as if it was created by a different civilization. It was discovered by Swedish researchers, and they basically had no idea what it was. They had to ask tons of other scientists for their opinions. When you look at this formation from above, it's 200 feet long and looks exactly like a fallen spaceship. It's hard to believe that it's a natural formation, but spoiler alert, it's totally made by nature because the Baltic Sea has gone through many erosions throughout history. Most likely, the bizarre formation is the result of these processes. A group of divers in Madagascar were shocked when they found this 7-foot monstrosity of a knife on the seafloor. The speculation started immediately, and many said that the knife was from some giants that had fought Megalodons and lived on Earth thousands and thousands of years ago. That could make a nice story, but the knife is most likely a movie prop that was lost at sea. One of the ocean's most bizarre animals is the frilled shark. It's believed that this fish is the reason for all those sea serpent stories that sea explorers of the past wrote about. These animals live pretty deep in the ocean, but sometimes they can be seen in shallow waters. It's super rare, but possible. The frilled shark has a big mouth sporting around 300 teeth. It also has a long body that looks like a lizard's, and it is truly a unique species of shark. Its prey can be half of its size because this shark's stomach is like that of a snake, and it can swallow huge fish or crustaceans. Spotting a few worms in your garden is no big deal, but after seeing a 26-foot-long one in the ocean, you will make your wetsuit a little wetter. This worm is super rare, and it's completely harmless to humans. It's actually not a giant worm. It's a cluster of zooids that are stuck together in a worm-shaped formation. They usually only eat plankton, bacteria, and other tiny things that can be found in the ocean. Probably the scariest thing in the ocean that is 100% real is the magna pinna, which can be found at crazy depths of 20,000 feet below the surface. This monster looks like an underwater Slender Man, but it's just a squid with really long tentacles that can reach a terrifying size of 8 feet. This guy has only been seen a few times, and basically, we don't know much about this creature so far. Wanna high-five a sea creature? Well, put your hand up for the Tasmanian red handfish. This fish doesn't swim like a fish. It walks. It uses its flipper-like hands to stroll around on the ocean floor. These bottom walkers are disturbed by swimmers and boats a lot. Some people even want to take them home as pets. I think it's better to just give them a wave and swim on by. The vampire squid. Its species name is Vampiroteuthis infernalis, which translates to vampire squid from hell. Oh yes, this vampire squid means to terrify everyone with its name, its dark red color, its spikes at the bottom, and the scary fact that it can basically turn itself inside out. The vampire squid loves putting on a good show, but it's as harmless as a kitten is to humans. It's as if Dracula scared the pants off you, but he didn't have blood-sucking fangs. The vampire squid feeds on food particles from plants and animal matter floating near the ocean's surface. Since they're not predators, they need good defensive strategies, and their vampiric look is designed to ward off large creatures who want to eat them. Turning themselves inside out is a defensive mechanism since the spiky areas in the inner skin are more intimidating. They also shoot out a substance that does not have color, but is packed with bioluminescent particles to distract predators. The vaquita. Going out on a boat off the coast of Mexico sounds like the perfect vacation. The sun, the blue water, the most endangered sea creature. Wait, what? The vaquita isn't dangerous, but don't expect it to stick around to say hello or sign any autographs. It's incredibly shy. This little cow, that's what it means in Spanish, is one tiny sea mammal. With those black markings around its eyes, it looks more like a sea panda to me. Seeing one should make you feel very special. They're on the brink of extinction, mostly because they got caught by accident in fishing nets. It's estimated that there's only 10 left in the wild. The blue dragon. This little creature looks like something out of a kid's fantasy movie. It's called the blue glaucus, casually referred to as the blue dragon or blue angel. It can be found in many places, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. It's kind of a mollusk and it only grows to be about an inch long. What you think is the back is actually the mollusk's bright underbelly. It regularly floats on its back so that its blue colors help it camouflage with the water's waves. The blue dragon isn't just pretty, it's also smart. It usually feasts on Portuguese man-o'-wars, also known as Physalia physalis. The blue dragon stores their stinging cells for later use, in essence, stealing their defensive mechanisms. When the blue dragon is threatened, it releases those stinging cells it stored, directing them at an enemy to sting them with more power than the Portuguese man-o'-war would have been capable of. As they can store a huge amount of stinging cells, they can be a threat to humans. So, if you find one, don't pick it up. It's best to admire it from a distance. The barrel-eye fish. If you ever wanted to have Superman's X-ray vision, Looking at the barrel-eye fish will make you feel like you gained that superpower at some point in your life without even realizing it. The barrel eye has a transparent head, so you can see how their eyes and brain look inside. This magnificent creature lives in the deep sea. This is the lowest level of the ocean, where strange creatures roam in near freezing temperatures and constant darkness. They're exposed to water's pressure that's almost 1,000 times that of the surface. If the idea of the deep sea sends a shiver down your spine, stay tuned to learn about another of its creatures later on. The barrel-eye fish can be found in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans. You might be wondering, why oh why would a fish have a see-through head? And that would be a fair question. Since the species was discovered in 1939, it was believed that the fish's eyes were set to see straight ahead and couldn't move. So it was assumed that they had tunnel vision. Scientists Bruce Robinson and Kim Reisenbichler from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute recently discovered that the fish can move its eyes vertically to see through the top of its translucent head, thus noticing if there are predators or prey nearby. The transparent head also allows more light to enter so they can detect prey better. It's believed that the barrel-eye fish eats jellyfish and small fish species. If you dive in the ocean at night, you might be lucky enough to see how orange ball corallimorph blooms in the dark. But make sure to be quick because as soon as you turn on your flashlight to take a good look, it will retract its tubes back into itself. The Megalodon. The whale shark isn't the biggest shark known to humans. If the entire shark species were a kingdom, the prehistoric Megalodon would be the ruler of the sea. Megalodon roamed the ocean a long time ago. About 15.9 to 2.6 million years back between the early Miocene and late Pliocene eras. While they've long been extinct, people are still amazed to learn about these gigantic sea beasts. Megalodon could reach anywhere between 45 feet to 60 feet in length with jaws more than 6 feet wide. A fossil of a tooth that once belonged to a Megalodon measured at 7 inches. Needless to say, I'm pretty stoked that these guys have long been extinct. But there's still some adventurers out there hoping to meet this monster one day. The Dumbo Octopus. This adorable creature, or creepy creature, or however you want to see it, is officially called Grimpoteuthis. More casually, it's referred to as the Dumbo octopus, named after the Disney character. Though Dumbo, the elephant, not the octopus, was teased for his big ears, it's highly unlikely that this adorable octopus gets teased by its water neighbors. They are the deepest living octopuses, living in the deep sea, and you know how scary that place is. They're only about 8 inches tall and spend their days hovering just above the seafloor eating snails, worms, and other food they find in the current or near ocean vents. There are nearly 17 species of Dumbo octopus, and they all have differences in height, color, and body parts. If you can't get enough strange animals, you'll be glad to learn that the deep sea has barely been explored by humans. So keep an eye out. There are bound to be more fascinating animals discovered in the deep in the future. The sea angel. These creatures might look and sound pretty cute, but their diet is far from sunshine and lollipops. Their favorite food are sea butterflies. They lay mucus traps for them and wait in ambush. The squat anemone shrimp. This shrimp is tiny, only 0.5 inches. It's also known as a dancer shrimp because of its peculiar behavior. When agitated, it raises its bottom above its head and does a little dance. Divers also say it readily jumps on their hands and cleans them. The coconut crab. This guy may look pretty creepy, especially when the sun goes down. Mature coconut crabs are around 3 feet in length. Their preferred foods are coconuts, but they can also hunt down lizards and even large birds. The slender snipe eel. Slender snipe eel is a slim and long creature that's still a mystery for marine scientists. It's 4 feet long and it has at least 750 bones in its spine, which is much more than any other animal in the world. The sea pen. Sea pen is 7 feet long and it has a lot of varieties, but most of them look indeed like a pen or a quill. The similarity is even more striking when the animal has a water-filled bulb that anchors it to the floor. The Persian carpet flatworm. This creature looks indeed like a carpet, despite being very small by comparison. It's only 4 inches long, able to become both male and female. it doesn't really mate with other flatworms. Rather, it fights them for the right to bear posterity. The flamingo-tongued sea snails. Tourists love these extraordinary snails for their pretty colors, thinking it's a shell, but in fact, the shell is quite dull and hidden underneath colorful soft tissues. They eat softer, toxic parts of corals and store their toxins to protect themselves.
You are a marine biologist who is on a mission to explore organisms that live in the deeper and darker parts of the ocean. As you prepare to dive, your ship's object detection system starts beeping. Something within the water is approaching, and it's really fast, and it seems like it's a Megalodon! You try to take your oxygen tank and other diving equipment off to prepare for what's to come. But in the blink of an eye, the Megalodon attacks your ship, breaking it into two pieces like the Titanic. You fall into the cold waters of the ocean. You immediately try to swim back to the surface in a panic, but the Megalodon notices you. You know you're not fast enough to escape. As the Megalodon swims towards you, your survival instinct takes control. You curl your body to minimize its surface area and decrease your risk of injury. Then the Megalodon opens its 11-foot wide mouth. The force of the water pushes you against the back of its throat, which is wide enough to fit a small car. Fortunately, you are able to grab onto one of its 276 teeth as tightly as you can until its jaw slaps shut with a loud banging sound. Thanks to that, you don't immediately end up in its stomach. You are in its mouth, standing on its tongue, which is almost larger than a couch. With panic, you try to push your way out of its mouth, but its jaw muscles are extremely strong. You start waiting for it to open its mouth on its own so that you'll swim out. But when it finally does, the water pressure is so strong that it even pushes you further back from its throat. You try holding onto the roof of its mouth, but it is too slippery for you to get a grip on. So you finally end up in its stomach. It's so dark inside there. While your eyes slowly adjust, you start hearing its heart. There is still no oxygen, so you keep your diving gear on. Good thing you didn't get a chance to take it off before. However, if you were able to take your snorkel off, it would smell rotten due to the methane gases. You start looking around and see the stomach is full of the remains of the Megalodon's previous meals. There are skeletal remains of fish and sharks all around, and even other divers who weren't as lucky as you. Fortunately, the wetsuit you're wearing is super protective. You start feeling more pressure around you, which means the Megalodon started its descent deeper into the ocean. The rising panic causes your muscles to twitch. You start feeling extremely exhausted. That's why you need to do something now, and do something fast if you want to make it out alive. You remember that your diving equipment includes an emergency knife. It's small, but it's really sharp. You take that out and try cutting through the Megalodon's skin. The Megalodon's swimming slowly gets weird as you continue trying to cut your way out. You can tell it doesn't want you inside itself anymore, so it finally barfs you out, making you the only survivor of a Megalodon attack.
450 million years ago, no, I wasn't around then, the sea level was higher, coral reefs started to form, the climate on our planet was stable and warm, not even dinosaurs were around yet. The time when bony and jawed fish we know as sharks appeared. They've been dominating the oceans and making other marine creatures flee in fear ever since. Many of them, like great white sharks, have evolved and adjusted to life in the open ocean as hunters with a pretty high position in the food chain. They're less diverse today than before. One of the reasons is the asteroid strike from the age of dinosaurs. After it reduced the number of shark species, only smaller and deep-water kinds that ate primarily fish survived. They started getting bigger over time. Near the surface, sharks such as makos or great white ones develop faster movements and are somewhat between gray and blue to blend in with their surroundings. The epaulet shark can even walk on the land. It can't take a walk on the beach because it can't breathe outside of the water, but it lives on coral flats in shallow tropical waters, so it can walk in kind of a crawling motion. But deep down below, there are mysterious, alien-looking, often huge shark species that didn't come to the surface, which is why they didn't need to adjust to the new environment and different conditions. They haven't changed a lot through time, so they're some living fossils. These creatures mostly don't have 5 gill slits, the most common number, but 6 or 7. It's because there's less oxygen the deeper you go in the ocean, so they need more gill slits. Sharks on the surface evolved to have fewer gill slits. 6-gill sharks are the most primitive sharks we have today. Their skeletons are like those of ancient extinct sharks, and they can survive only in very deep waters. Like cats, sharks have a layer of reflective cells placed inside their eyes, which helps them see better in the dark, deep sea or cloudy waters. Sharks on the surface have big eyes because they evolved to hunt in the sunlight, so they tend to rely on their vision. Those that live in shallow waters have small eyes, so they can protect themselves from the sand. Like some other deep-sea creatures, six-gill sharks also have bigger eyes to take in as much light as possible. They have more light-sensing rods, but don't distinguish colors that well. In the ocean's twilight zone, with the minimum of sunlight, there's a couple of bioluminescent shark species. They don't take in light within their eyes, but produce or re-emit it with their bodies. Their skin or organs have specialized cells that produce a soft blue-green light. Deep-sea creatures that produce their own light do that to attract their prey, deter animals from going after them, or, scientists think, communicate with each other. It can even help them to camouflage. They do it by hiding their silhouettes from animals going after them. They produce enough light to match their surroundings. The biggest luminous underwater creature is the kitefin shark, found swimming 980 feet below sea level, preying on groundfish or smaller sharks. It can grow almost 6 feet long and lives 3,200 feet below sea level. Deep-sea sharks are also bigger than those on the surface. The Greenland shark can grow up to 24 feet long, bigger than a great white. There's a thing called deep-sea gigantism. Creatures in nutrient-poor depths of the ocean grow bigger because, that way, they lose less energy as heat. The Greenland shark lives its life in slow motion. It has a slow metabolism and can go very long periods without food. With their slow pace, they evolved to live up to 500 years at depths of 7,200 feet. Sharks in shallow waters catch their prey relying on agility and speed, but for them, it's easier because there's plenty of food on the surface. Deep-sea sharks, with less food and slower life rhythm, had to develop a different style. They're more opportunistic, definitely not picky, and don't care if their future meal is alive or not. Frilled shark, another living fossil from the darkest depths, hasn't evolved much through time, and they're one of the last of their kind, with all of their relatives already gone extinct. It grows up to 7 feet long, primarily hunts on squid, and catches other sharks and fish. It looks like a dinosaur, a snake-like face, a long, smooth, thin body that moves in a serpentine way. It can propel itself with the power of its tail and curl like snakes. They don't swim in a straight line like other sharks. Cookie-cutter shark grows up to 20 inches. It got the name because of the way it feeds, biting off small pieces. It's a parasite creature, which means it feeds off bigger animals but leaves them alive. They have sharp teeth and sometimes even swallow those that fall off on purpose. Some researchers think it could be because they live in the depths that are nutrient poor. If they swallow the teeth, they could recycle calcium and other material from it. Prickly shark is a rare and unusual creature with many thorn-like denticles and 2 small dorsal fins. It lives mostly in the depths of the Pacific region up to 1,900 feet. Ghost sharks are not even real sharks, but fish closely related to them and rays. They have big pectoral and pelvic fins, 2 dorsal fins, pretty big eyes, and unlike their cousins, have a single external gill opening. Ghost sharks have slender tails and can grow up to 80 inches, silver to blackish color. They sometimes live in rivers and coastal waters, but also in the depths of the ocean of 8,200 feet or even deeper. They are pretty weak swimmers, so they tend to feed on invertebrates and small fish. Goblin sharks. Swimming through the deep sea, this creepy shark with a flabby body suddenly sees a small, innocent squid. It goes toward it, but the potential snack notices it and quickly starts moving to dart away. It seems like the plan could work at first, but then the shark suddenly thrusts the jaw of its mouth and catches the poor little squid in a second. After the meal is finished, the animal simply fits the jaw back into the mouth and goes away as if nothing happened. This is possible because it has a jaw connected to 3-inch-long flaps of skin, which is why it can unfold from the snout. It can grow up to 12 feet long with a weight of 460 pounds. Scientists think goblin sharks are mostly active in the morning and evening. The shark has a long, prominent snout and specific sensing organs on it. It uses them to sense electrical fields in the dark oceanic depths. Seven-gill shark is a big cow shark, brown to silver-gray on top, white underneath, black and white spots, with a thick body, a small dorsal fin, and a wide, blunt snout. It can grow up to 10 feet long, mostly lives in the depth of 1,870 feet, but you can also find it in deep channels and bays. It can be aggressive toward humans if provoked, so don't. Like most deep-sea creatures, it's an opportunistic hunter that's not quite picky but likes to go after dolphins, seals, porpoises, and other marine animals. Megamouth sharks mostly live in the depths of 15,000 feet and spend most of their time in the dark, like me. Scientists discovered it in 1976 because it went near the surface at night to feed on zooplankton. That's the only time these sharks go there. During the day, they return to their quiet, dark, and mysterious depths. They are filter feeders, which means they keep their mouths wide open while swimming, so they filter the planktons they like to eat. There are organs that produce light inside of their mouths, which attracts potential prey, such as pelagic crustaceans. These sharks live in the deep parts of the ocean, but you can rarely find them below almost 2 miles. Scientists think some other, stronger bony fishes outcompeted them. Deep parts of oceans became oxygenated around 70 million years ago, and sharks have been around way longer. But bony fishes adjusted and adapted efficient ways to use oxygen, while sharks were slow with adaptations, so they lost. Also, oceanic depths are way colder, which is challenging for fish and the rest of cold-blooded animals because the speed of their metabolism widely depends upon the external temperature.